Hi, welcome to the last session on language in society. In this session, we focus on language in use in different situations and in different groups. Walt Whitman has told us about language in use as he talked about slang. Language is not an abstract construction of the learned or of dictionary markers, but it is something arising out of the work, needs, ties, joys, affections, tastes of long generations of humanity, and has its basis broad and low, close to the ground. So it tells us about the different situations in which language is used. When we are talking about the language that is used in different situations, we are talking about a situation dialect. A situation dialect is style or register. And as part of our sociolinguistic competence, we have a knowledge about how to use language in a certain situation. Therefore, besides what we know about the language, about its phonetics, its phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, we have a social knowledge about how to use the language. How to use a language appropriately in a certain situation. When we are greeting a friend, how do we use the language? Do we use a formal way of speaking? If we use that, we want to show to our friend that we are not intimate, and this is not what we want. With friends, we want to sound intimate, and therefore, what do we use? What kind of style or register do we use? We will use an informal style. But when you are on a job interview, or when you see the dean of the university, what would be the style or register that you would use? All of us have a social knowledge of what is appropriate in this situation, and appropriately we use the formal register, formal style. How do we talk to our parents? If we change our ways of speaking in different situations and we do not use the dialect appropriately, we might lose a lot. The friends would be offended, parents would be offended. We get a reject on a job application. So therefore, knowing how to use a language appropriately in a situation is a knowledge that we have, and that is called sociolinguistic competence. All of us have at least two styles. One is the informal style that, for example, is used when we greet a friend, when we talk to our parents, and a formal style register that we use when we are in a formal situation, like lecture. When we want to give a lecture, we use the standard dialect of the language, the formal style, the formal register. If we are using a certain style, we also want to identify ourselves with a group. For example, if we are in a team and the team are speaking in a certain way, they are using a certain variety, for example, an intimate, informal variety, we would use that in order to show our group membership. And by using it, we exclude those that we do not want to be part of this team. Or when we are using the informal language at home with our parents, siblings, we want to show that we belong to a certain situation in which intimacy is important, solidarity is important, and we exclude every person that is not part of the household, those who do not belong to the family group. In some languages, like Persian, we have certain words that would make a differentiation between the formal and informal dialect style. For example, we use to when we want to talk to a close friend, and we use shoma when we are talking to our professors. In German, that's the same. They use Sie when they want to talk to somebody in a formal situation, but would use Du when talking to friends, to parents, to those with whom you feel intimate. So therefore, the social situations would affect the style of the language that we use. In Japanese, they use honorifics. Or in Persian, again, we use honorifics or ta'aruf. And the kind of ta'aruf that we use in one situation would be different from the way we use it in another situation. That is, we are alert to what are the specifics of that circumstance, of that situation, and it would affect how we speak, the style of our speech. So therefore, styles are dialects that we have as a result of speaking in a certain situation. And besides having a linguistic competence, that is the linguistic knowledge about phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, and semantics of the language, we have sociolinguistic competence, the knowledge about how to speak in an appropriate way in a certain situation. In informal situations, not only we can see some words that are used mostly in informal situations, but there are some words that we use when we are with very close friends. We use it in the casual speech, and we would not use it in front of others. For example, with friends, we might be using some words that we would never use them in front of our parents or our siblings. Again, with our siblings, we might have some words used that we would not use it in other situations. Sometimes these words would make a distinction between those who are young and those who are old. That is, would use some words or phrases in their casual speech. They invent some of these words, and it is spread in those social or age groups. And the thing about them is that they change fast. These words are slang. Slang has been defined by Sandberg as a language that rolls up its sleeves, spits on its hands, and goes to work. So, you see, this language is very informal. And you might think of some words, for example, chori, or for some period, khafan. These are the words that are called slang. They are invented, they are spread by a certain age group. So now you, as belonging to a certain age group, you have some words that older people like me, we do not use them and we do not even know about them. We need those words to be explained to us. So that is invented by the youth, and they change. Like every new generation of the youth that come, they would have their own slangs. How are slangs made? Some are new words that are created by recombining old words into new meanings. For example, hang up or drill down. It can be entirely new words. Hoodie, that refers to both a certain way of clothing and to a certain person. Or barf. Sometimes we give new meanings to old words, or we expand their meanings. For example, ecstasy is used for drug. Crib is used for home. Or weed for marijuana. Or pig fuzz for police officer. One thing about slangs is stable, and that's they are universal. In all ages, they have been there. They are created by certain groups, and they are spread by that group, but they change fast. And they point to the creativity of language. Sometimes these slangs stay long and they find their way into dictionaries. Sometimes they would die after a decade or two. Besides slang, which is used in informal situation, which is on the informal extreme of the continuum of the language, we have, besides them, we have jargon or argot. Jargon is a special word that is used by members of a profession. For example, linguists, when they are going to talk to each other, they use technical terms. So jargon is the same as saying they are technical terms used by people of a certain occupation. Why is it that they use jargon? It's because they want to have a clear communication in that technical terms, using those technical terms. Also because they want to identify themselves with a certain group. Some of the jargons that you know about and they have found their way into the wider society, and they have stayed there used by all of the people, is what we have as computeries, like modem, DVD, RAM. So bit. These are words that have come about, that have been created. These are the technical terms, special words related to computer sciences, and they have found their way from that occupation to all of the other peoples in the society. However, there are jargons that they would use and others would not have access, they would not know much about them unless they refer to a dictionary and try to find out what the word means. So therefore, jargon, they are special words, technical words that members of an occupation will use. And it falls on the very formal scientific continuum of language use, in contrast to slang, which is the most informal type of language. There are some words that I cannot use when I'm presenting in classes, or right now as I'm talking in this presentation, I'm not going to use them, and I'm not supposed to use them, and I'm not allowed by the norms of the polite society to use them. They are considered inappropriate. If I use it, the society would judge me based on its value system that I have been impolite, I have been rude, that I have used inappropriate words. Those words are taboo, words to be avoided. A case of what here has been said as something offensive to be avoided is the use of expletives. Here in the second one, in the second box, you see something about foreign swear words that are inoffensive unless the person has learned it early in life. Or here in apart from Macbeth, it says, "Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell that summons thee to heaven or to heck." So heck is hell, but since to hell has been something that is regarded inappropriate in a polite society, it has been changed to heck. In order to avoid the use of taboo words, some words or phrases have been used to replace them, and they are called euphemism. Or sometimes the words have had some unpleasant aspects or some frightening aspects, and they have been avoided. For example, for die, the word pass away or pass on has been used. توی فارسی ما نمیگیم فلانی مرد، بلکه میگیم فلانی از دنیا رفت. مردن و از دنیا رفتن هر دو یک معنا دارند، اما سعی میکنیم از یوفیمیزم استفاده بکنیم برای این که از اون بعد ناخوشایند این جمله بکاهیم و همچنین اون فرد مقابل فکر نکنه که ما برامون طرف اهمیت نداشته یا احترامی برش قائل نبودیم. For deaf, hearing impaired is used. So here, as we go through the different euphemisms that have been used, we come to the conclusion that a word has two aspects to its meaning. One is denotative meaning, and this is the meaning that is mentioned in the dictionary, and that's what we study in semantics. And connotative meaning, that reflects attitudes, emotions, and value judgments. So here, die, when it comes to its denotative meaning, it means that a person is not alive anymore. And what is its connotative meaning? Well, this word is not regarded as a positive verb, and therefore it is replaced by some word to make it less unpleasant. Pass away. However, euphemisms over time, they change to taboo. For example, at one point, crippled has been used by معلولان. And since this word has some negative connotations, then it has been replaced by handicapped. Since handicap has taken some taboo characteristics and some unpleasant aspects, then it has been replaced by disabled. But as time passed on, disabled also found a negative connotation, and it took on the taboo characteristics of the word it has replaced, and therefore it's been replaced by challenged. A new euphemism has been created, challenged. This process in which a euphemism takes on the taboo characteristics of the word it has replaced, and therefore a new euphemism is required, this is called euphemism treadmill. So in euphemism treadmill, a euphemism takes on taboo characteristics and its replacement by a new euphemism is required. As we already said, these taboo words, they are dependent on the value systems of the society. For example, in a certain family, some words are taboo, but in another family, the same words are okay. For example, those families who might swear at home, they might not think of it as that taboo compared to families that they ban it. Or in certain groups, for example, in male groups or female groups, they might be using some words quite freely, but then in front of others, in front of people from another gender, they would not use those words. Also, in different cultures, it might be different. In some cultures, some of the words might be regarded as taboo, that you are not supposed to use them at all, but in some other cultures they are more tolerant of taboo words and they would use it. For example, the word shit is a taboo word that is used frequently by English speaking people, but in our society, if somebody hears that, they would think that, well, there's something wrong with the person that doesn't know this word should be avoided in, for example, a formal situation or in a situation when people are not that sincere, that close to each other. Language is used in the society, and as it's used in the society, therefore the words that are used in a language might show some racist or chauvinist views of the person that uses certain words. For example, epithets for different religions or for different nationalities or for different races. And a word like nigger for African American, there is racism. It shows the racist views of that person who has used nigger. And it is not only in the word, but even in its derivations, that is not that much approved. And the epithets, they should be avoided, epithets for different races and for different religions or different nationalities. One thing about epithets, in the same way that we talked about it when we were talking about euphemism and about slangs, is that language is creative and ever-changing. And so epithets can also change. Sometimes an epithet that is used to demean a minority might be used as a term of bonding or endearment about among the members of that minority. For example, nigger, that has started as a racist view and as a word for African American by non-African Americans, now has changed to a word of endearment, a word of bonding by African Americans. Or those who are crippled, they might call each other cripple crip, which is an epithet. If others would use it, it would be inappropriate, but they would use it among themselves as a term of endearment. So language changes over time, and a word that might have negative meanings at some point, overuse might be, it might change to something with positive connotations. However, it also works the other way around, that words that have been used with positive connotations might lose those positive connotations and they would take on negative meanings. They might change to epithets, they might change to slangs, they might change to taboo words. So it goes in both ways, that from euphemisms, from slangs, from epithets, we might change to something that is in contrast to it. For euphemism, it might worsen over time. But epithets might change in the opposite direction, and they might be used as words of terms of endearment or bonding. Another aspect to the use of language, so we talked about gender and gender studies and gender as a social factor in sociolinguistics. But there is something that people of speakers of a language would show by using certain terms or by presuppositions that they might have in mind as meanings of some terms. For example, in 20th century, some of terms have been used that shows the presuppositions of those authors. Doctor. What doctor means? A man of great learning. Why not a woman of great learning? Why man should be used as unmarked form in order to refer to both men and women rather than woman being used as referring to both? Why mankind rather than womankind? Or to use examples like manly courage. Why shouldn't we say womanly courage? Or womanish tears. Why shouldn't say manly tears? As examples. So these examples show that tears are for women and courage is something that can be attributed to men, and therefore they show manly courage. The use of the language reflects the attitudes of the society, and it can be positive or negative. And here in these cases of manly courage, womanish tears, and doctor, a man of great learning, we see traces of sexism. If we look at the linguistic forms that are used for gender, we can see some way of showing or some way of signaling the feminine in contrast to masculine. And that's through adding some morpheme. For example, an actor, actress, hero, heroine. What do we have? We have a morpheme added to the masculine form in order to create the feminine. We derive the feminine from masculine, and the masculine is unmarked and the feminine is marked. Or in a sentence like, everybody had better pay his fee next time. Everybody had better pay his fee next time. So why his fee? In order to mean third person, whatever gender, rather than her fee. Why not her fee? And her would refer to both men and women. The unmarked third person pronoun is used to refer to both male and female. In this sentence, everybody had better pay his fee next time. But if you use her, then it presupposes that the client is a female. So something, therefore, is there in the linguistic units of languages that are regarded as more sexist. We see more unmarked forms used for both men and women. For example, actor used for both men and women rather than only for men, and using actress for women. And it's because women's roles in society has been increasing over recent years. This tendency or this behavior in languages has been attempted to explain based on Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. If you remember Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, we said that the way we use the language reflects our experiences, or the language that we use influences how we see the world. Here, related to gender, the way a language encodes different categories like male and female affects the way that people think about male and female. If they are using the unmarked form actor for male, but the marked form by adding a morpheme to that for female, then they show that the male is unmarked, is predominant, and female is derivative. However, these views sometimes become very deterministic. It might be the case that, for example, we have pronouns her, his, these two pronouns for male and female in order to make it clear rather than to show one is derivative of another one, or that one is unmarked and the other one is marked. So we are coming to the last topic related to language and society and how language is used. Sometimes languages are invented within a group because they want to keep outsiders away. They do not want outsiders to know what they are saying. Chinese women, they invented nushu as a means of communicating in the sexually repressive societies of Imperial China. And there have been other languages invented. For example, slaves, they have in the United States, slaves have created a language in order to communicate with each other and to keep the bosses away and to prevent them from knowing what they say. Besides secret languages, we have language games that are used by children and adults for amusement. As cases, Pig Latin is given in Obidobi, and in Persian we have Zargari. There is one thing that is shared by all of these language games is that they involved either adding a suffix to each word, or they insert a syllable after each vowel, or they reverse phonemes or substitute the phonemes that are there. And what does it tell us? It tells us about the discreteness of the language. If you remember, we said one of the universal features of human being is discreteness, and that we can make games with language in which we might use affixes, add affixes to a word, or that we have a knowledge of syllable and therefore we, for games, for amusement, we create languages that we use a syllable after each word, or that we reverse phonemes, we have a knowledge of what is the phoneme. When we substitute phonemes, we have a knowledge of what is a phoneme. So these language games and secret languages, they tell us something about the discreteness of a language so that you can use them in order to create new languages for amusement or for keeping secrets. And also they tell us about the basic and underlying feature of a language, that is creativity. An interesting example of these linguistic games is from Walbury, in which all of the content words are replaced by semantically contrasted words. So that those men are small means this woman is big. So what does it tell us? It tells us the knowledge that people have about morphology, like what are the content words, what are the semantic relations between words, and how they use them in order to amuse each other and also for fun. So this was the end of the last session on language and society. I hope you have enjoyed the topics in sociolinguistics.